How did you find this deal, Dan?
I'd actually bought the property next door to this. And we got in contact with him, and he might as well have read out of Property Magic. He said, look, after a certain amount of time, you can pay me a price that we'll agree now.
Yeah. Now
he put together a deal. We agreed a price of £200,000 at any time in 36 months.
First of all, put your hands together and help me welcome Dan Norman to the stage, please. Come on in. So, Dan, hello, how are you?
Very good indeed. Thank you very much for inviting me here.
Dan is coming back to be our pin host at Birmingham Central.
Well, it's interesting because the session, if you weren't here yesterday, you missed out on so much good stuff. But the first session yesterday was very much about what's going to be happening in the next 6, 12 months. And one of the reasons I'm coming back, A, is to give back. I've missed the environment. It's good to be involved in it. But there is just so much movement in the next, I think, 12 to 24 months. There's going to be so much happening. Yeah. It's the right time. I've had my consolidatory year. I've had a sabbatical for 18 months to go and do a whole bunch of stuff. And it's the right time now to come back because there's going to be a lot of movement.
Yeah, and all our pin hosts and helpers say, can we just give a round of applause to acknowledge all our pin hosts and all our helpers help at pin meetings? Can we round of applause to those guys? Because they are all volunteers and they want to kind of get involved. Why don't you tell people how we know each other?
So
the story there.
We both went to the University of Birmingham, and I started to fail my civil engineering degree. I did pass just gradually. Simon was 2 years above me and was running nightclub events. I started running nightclub events because I was very bored as a civil engineer.
And we were competitors.
We were.
For quite a long time.
I couldn't break his night. So his night was on a Thursday and mine was on a Monday. And the students would buy tickets to his Thursday night on the Monday in preference to my Monday night.
Yeah, shame really.
Now, we were both still doing good numbers. You were selling out 1,500.
Yeah.
I was doing that or a little bit more, had a bigger capacity club. But it was the fact that the marketing was so strong and the relationships were so strong of what Simon had built, and it was a great event and so on and so forth, just meant he had massive, massive momentum. And it was, it pissed me off something terrible.
You had a similar journey to me because you bought a house very soon after university, didn't you? Or was it, while you were still at uni, was it?
It was straight way after. At the time, we were getting a student grant, and I came out enough with a £2,500 deposit, and that was the deposit on a house at the time in 1997.
And you stayed in the Birmingham area because you were doing DJing and club stuff and became a restaurant manager and all that kind of stuff, and in the area, and you rented out your... So we had a very similar journey, didn't we?
100%. It's a wonderful environment to be in, and we're very fortunate. While we're all in the same industry, we're here all together helping each other, which is...
and not competing.
Well, it blew my mind, which is why it took so long, I think, to get onto the Mastermind situation. So,
but so you got your first one. You, like me, realised that property is a really smart thing to do.
Sure.
And you were making money from all the various things you were doing, real entrepreneur, obviously. And you started to do a different type of investing. So talk to us about what you were doing.
The nicest way I can put what I was doing was I was buying properties that needed a bit of work. You might call it glam and lamb, you might call it magnolia makeover, 2 and 3 bedroom single let properties that I was fortunate to have a little bit of money out of the nightclub business and was either buying cash or very low leverage loans from the bank, refurbing and selling on generally. But
I'm making good money doing that.
Yeah, it was okay up until 2008.
Only 2000, so it was working, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was good. 2008 was a bit sticky, but it was trading property. Yes. I held a few, and I had a little modest portfolio of 10 properties over 16 years. Yeah, okay. So it was very different to what you see in Mastermind. Yeah. But that was purely because I didn't know, to coin a phrase, what I didn't know.
Yes. So, interesting. You were making money, doing well, got up to 10 properties. So, apart from me nagging you, what was it that got you to come on Mastermind in the end?
So we still had a whole bunch of mutual associates, and a few of them went on the early Mastermind courses, and it became very obvious that something was missing from what I was doing, because they were achieving very, very high levels of property ownership and high level of income very, very quickly, without the knowledge and the experience and the team that I'd managed to accumulate over however many years of property.
So give us a quick, so you've been doing property 16 years, had about 10, then you came on Mastermind. Yep. What did you do in the year on Mastermind?
The end year figures were, it was 1.95 million. I'd achieved an income of, it was around 45,000, but that was purely because a lot of the works we were doing on the properties were quite extensive. It was real heavy works, bit of structural extensions and so forth. Net income that achieved was over £100,000, but it wasn't all there at the beginning because obviously there's a time lag.
You had to finish the project off.
Yeah, but what was really interesting was 6 months in, a chap who had 0 experience, hadn't even bought his own house before, as far as I know, got up on the mic and very quietly said, "I just thought everyone would like to know that I've hit the target."
Yeah.
It took me 8 months to do the same as he did in 6 months with all my cash and bits and bobs and so on and so forth.
Why was that, Dan? Why do you reckon?
Well, 2 reasons. One, he had a massive reason.
Yeah.
He took a view that his wife was not good. His wife was 3 months pregnant.
Oh, this was David, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
David Hall.
Okay,
It was top 5 performer. Very humble guy, and it really made me pay attention. Yeah. He basically took a view that his wife was not going to have to go back to work unless she chose to, which is a pretty powerful reason. He did it for her, absolutely fine. Not saying she didn't have to go back to work, but if she chose to, she could. If she didn't want to, fine, no worries at all. And he replaced her income and quite a bit of his through rent to rent. Until I went on Mastermind Accelerator, which I did before Mastermind, never even knew rent to rent existed.
Even though you've been investing 16 years?
Correct.
So let's talk about this deal. So same property, before and after. How did you find this deal, Dan?
I'd actually bought the property next door to this, and it was a 4-bedroom detached, and I use that word usually because you might see here there's a whole bunch of moss and tree and a very illegal garage conversion on the property here, and this was leaking into the house I'd bought. So we did the logical thing and climbed up on the roof and tried to find out what the problem was, and the caretaker of this building turned up. There's about 3...
Said, "Oi, what are you doing on my roof?"
Basically. And we said, well, we've got a leak. And it turned out that this property had been empty for about 6.5 years. It had been broken into so many times they'd stopped breaking in to nick the copper. Very poor condition. And we got chatting with the caretaker once he'd calmed down from us climbing up on his roof and said, "Look, why has it been empty so long?" And he said, "Well, I don't know. I'm paid every month to come and patch it up."
Get people off the roof.
Yeah, basically. And we found the owner, and we managed to get contact details for him eventually because it was a very strange situation with this caretaker. He didn't really know who was in control of the building. It had been left to rot. My question is, how many of you have driven by a building that's been sat there for God knows how many years? It's crazy, isn't it? Right. And we got in contact with him, and he might as well have read out of Property Magic.
Right.
A purchase lease option. He said, "Look, we bought these places to do a supported accommodation, helping people who had severe challenges, and it really didn't work for us. It wasn't our core strategy. We do a lot of care activity, and these were much smaller units than we're used to dealing with. And to be honest, we don't need to worry about it, and we've just forgotten about it. We're not builders. It needs an awful lot of work. But what I'm wondering is, could you possibly get the property, put it back into good order, we'll do it all under legal contract, and maybe you could pay me just a little bit of rent every month while you're doing the works, and then after a certain amount of time, you can pay me a price that we'll agree now."
Yeah. Now that doesn't normally happen when you speak to, just to set the scene, right? That doesn't normally happen, but I think he's got a problem, and obviously he's aware of purchase option and made it easy for you, right?
Well, this is a very interesting thing. When you're talking with people who have a commercial background, they get purchase lease options because they've been doing them since 1701 for land transactions.
Yeah.
It's a very different environment to talking with a residential homeowner.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he put together a deal. We agreed a price of £200,000 at any time in 36 months.
Okay.
His opinion was, "I don't really care about this property. If you get it refurbed and start renting it in 10 months, great. You just keep on paying me a little bit. We have to pay £1 to make it a legal contract. There has to be consideration."
And you had to pay your legals as well.
Yeah, I had to pay the legals, which that chopped up a few £1,000s as well. The monthly option fee was just £500. He was very considerate of the fact that we had a lot of refurbishment work to do, considerable refurbishment.
So, and I guess when it was empty, that was a cost to him before the mortgage and everything? Or was there no mortgage on it? Or
I believe there was a little bit of loan, and he just wanted to cover his expenses.
Okay.
On the
You're
property.
taking away the problem, really.
Sure.
Okay.
The refurb cost us 250 grand, which was a lot of money to put into the property.
A lot of money to put in, yeah.
A lot of work to be done. And you know what? We overcomplicated it for ourselves by, at the same time as doing this, we were also doing a 6-bedroom HMO and a commercial to residential conversion, and we were finishing off a split of 2 properties as well. We had a very busy mastermind year. We did 9 projects. Our eyes were bigger than our bellies, in fact.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit more cost than we wanted to go to. The net profit at the moment is 3 grand, because I use this property now, it's unencumbered, as first charge security for an investor who could care less about what I'm doing with his money as long as he's got first charge security.
Right. Okay.
So the interest rate is quite low, but he does have first charge security geared up on that property at a reasonable level. My monthly cash flow, because I have an FRI lease, that's a full repaired insured lease. To a housing association. They basically deal with all the internal maintenance. Unless the roof falls in or the walls fall down, then that's my responsibility. Everything internal, dealing with the clients, dealing with the care, dealing with all those kind of bits is their responsibility.
So giving it to a charity. So, in fact, you're
housing association, better word to use.
You're doing a rent-to-rent with them?
It's a commercial lease.
Yes. Yeah, but they take it on and give you a guaranteed income each.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. And that's not a bad return on investment, really, is it?
Yeah, and thinking about it, because we got the works completed, it took a little bit longer than we hoped. We got the works completed 13 months out of the 36-month period. We were achieving that rent quite early on and only paying 500 back in costs. This was before I put a loan on it.
So this is once you actually bought it.
Correct.
And then refinanced it, and this is what you make now.
That's correct, yeah.
Excellent, good. So so an option, looking around. How many of you have walked past an empty property and thought, oh, I wonder who owns that? Who's done that? But who's then not done anything about it? You can go on land registry, find out who owns it, or knock around the neighbours. And this is a great action to take. This is such a valuable learning point. There will be deals that you walk past or drive past every single day, and eventually something happens that someone buys it and puts some scaffold around and do something with it.
The interesting thing was, I didn't know about purchase lease options until I came on Mastermind.
No. So you wouldn't have known how. You would have had to spend the money to buy it and spend all the money to do the work.
Yeah.
But instead you did the work, which was quite extensive, got an income from it, and then bought it eventually.
In fact, I would not have bought the property next door to this if I hadn't been on Mastermind, because I've been driving by that one for about 18 months before I had the confidence to go and deal with it.
Yeah.
Because it was so far different to what I've been doing, 2- and 3-bedroom terrace houses in B31.
And you were just doing what you knew before.
Correct.
This was a much bigger project, but this is something you did as a joint venture with a couple. So how did this come about?
So the motley bunch here, you'll know the one on the left. The next chap is the head of the housing association we work with as a partnership. But the other 2 guys are Dave Morris, who was winner of Mastermind 13, and Greg Reed, who was one of your top performers on 14. We got together because part of the Mastermind education is something called wealth dynamics. And the wealth dynamics administrator said to Dave, you should probably have a chat with Greg. You'd work well together. And Dave and I had sat together on the first day of Mastermind and said, we will do a deal together. It took us a year to do that. But the interesting thing was that we have entirely different skill sets. Dave is structure, definition, spreadsheets, financing. He's actually just incorporated our LLP into a limited company. I've signed 4 bits of paper for that whole process to be dealt with because it's completely out of my skill set. And he's done that entire process with a full refinance, changing all the leases, etc., etc., etc. Incredible, incredible bit of work. Greg deals with all the creativity, the marketing, and the relationships, and I run the building team. I run the refurbishment and the activity. So we're all very distinct in our abilities. We got together in partway through 2014, spent 6 months thinking, what can we do that's property related, but is not quite as jugular, not quite as aggressive as what we did on Mastermind? Because you know what, we all had our own little portfolios and we were quite comfortable. What can we do to make a little bit of a difference? Still absolutely a business, but something that will help other people. And we saw the challenges there are in homelessness, and we thought, right, we want to put together 100 rooms for people who are facing homelessness within an 18-month period. We set ourselves a goal, but do it part-time and only doing what we do as a specialism. This is the Adam and Eve, which was a 4,500 square foot pub in the Digbeth area of Birmingham.
Say it again.
The purchase was 355.
Right.
Refurb 205.
Okay, so that's 560? 355, 205,
yeah. About that, 560 and change. The reval was 950.
Wow.
We almost fell off our chair. We were expecting about 750.
Yeah, and how many beds was it converted into?
We've got 15 rooms, and then the downstairs is now a cafe and community space. They show films, do training courses and all sorts of things down there. So the actual pub downstairs has remained as a facility for the community, which is really cool. And it's also a place where people who live in the accommodation upstairs can reskill and train, which is, it's kind of the virtuous circle.
Yeah.
We receive an income off the property, but we're absolutely unconcerned about that because, again, it's on an FRA basis. The valuation of the headroom is just...
So have you refinanced, taken all the money out?
I think we've left in about £50,000, £60,000 purely because Lloyds have a bit of a criteria as to where they'll sit.
Yes.
But that val was at the back end of 2016 as well. And Digbeth is obviously moving on.
It has moved on a lot.
Sure.
Great. So, and this is the way you've kind of given back because you're giving to people, look, you've set up this New Leaf charity, so you're giving properties to these kind of housing associations, supporting people who just wouldn't probably get accommodation elsewhere. So you're making money and helping people. How does that feel?
It's splendid. The problem with a lot of housing associations is that they get the bottom 10 to 20% of a landlord's portfolio. And we took a view that we were going to give them refurbished properties at the front end, making their clients do cowboy whoops as they get in there because they're of a good standard and they're clean and safe and dry. So it's been quite a cool couple of years. Again, and I don't want to belabor the point a lot, but it's interesting how if you go on Mastermind Accelerator, for instance, or any training course at that level, you come across a certain set of people and you get a certain set of knowledge. If you go on a full-year course with it's quite a commitment in time, energy, and resource. You come across a bunch of different people, and over time, I hate to think how much that is actually worth. You know, the community, and indeed the cash value from either the purchase lease option that I just would not have known about. I'd still be throwing magnolia paint on walls in properties in Northfield in Birmingham, even though we know each other. So it's been a very interesting journey. Great. Dan, thank you so much for sharing. That's it for Dan Norman. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dan. All the best.
Hey, I do hope you've got massive value from watching this and the other videos on this YouTube channel. I've prepared some extra training all about purchase lease options, which is the most powerful tool you could use to control property and works with every other property strategy. You really do need to make sure you understand about this. That's why I put this extra training together for you at no cost. All you have to do is click on the link below the video, come and fill in the details and you get access to that training. And I really think you should definitely do it right now. I've also lined up another video for you that I think might be interesting for you to watch as well. So until the next video, remember to invest with knowledge, invest with skill, and click on the link and come and join me for that additional training all about purchase lease options.